Welcome into Northside Territory, your new Cubs podcast. This is Sahadev Sharma with my co-host Patrick Mooney. We have joined the Foul Territory team. We're very excited. You may have been listening to us in the past. We both write for The Athletic. Our podcast was on The Athletic with our good friend Brett Taylor, and we have changed locations, and we are with the Foul Territory family. Really excited to be back talking Cubs baseball. It's really fun for both of us to do, and that Foul Territory was willing to host us and give us a platform to talk Cubs baseball with our fans is a really exciting opportunity for us. We're excited to get back at it after a few months off, and obviously there is a lot of Cubs baseball to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, just great people at the Foul Territory Network, and I think what they have done really well in a short amount of time is establish themselves as a voice of authority and talking about the game in a meaningful way, in a substantial way that takes, listeners or readers behind the scenes. And that's what we always try to do at Wrigley Field. And that's what we're going to do here on Northside Territory. We'll have some guests. We'll do some interactive things once we get this up and running. Lots of airing of grievances. And I don't know, man, did we pick perfect time to launch this podcast? Right after losing a 4-game series to the Pirates and they're getting no hit, needing a replay confirmation, to get a 1-0 walk-off win to avoid a sweep. I don't know, a lot going on, man. What jumps out at you?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. When things aren't going well and things are expected to go well, even when they're not expected to go well, when they're not going well, Cubs fans, all fans, right? That's when they get riled up and they want to hear what is going on. It's easy to say it's 162 games, and I do believe things will get better for the Cubs in general. I do like how this team is built. I think right now it's hard to look at anything else. There are other flaws, but the way the offense is playing right now is costing this team wins. There are injuries. There have been injuries. This team has not been healthy, and that's going to lead to bad play, right? There's sloppy defense. That's really cost them. But when you're scoring 1-2 runs a game, it's really hard to win games. And right now what we're seeing, it's easy to point fingers, but I think it's hard to ignore what Ian Happ has done. He's a better player than this, right? He takes a lot of heat in general, but right now when Cody Bellinger was down, when Seiya Suzuki was down, he didn't step up and really perform at a higher level. And he hasn't looked any more comfortable at the plate since they've returned. You would think, maybe there's less focus on Ian Happ by the pitchers. That hasn't happened. Happ, I know I saw him take one right down the middle today. He had that first home run in this series, and that's about it. There have been some quality contact. It hasn't all been terrible at bats, but clearly when you take a sinker like that down the middle, that's what Ian Happ should be attacking, right? So he's off. Nothing else, and everything else just feels like where are the big hits, right? I know Christopher Morel on a different day, we're probably talking about a different game, right? Because that ball that he hit probably goes out instead of being a sac fly. So little things like that aren't going their way, but those are few and far between from what I've observed. I don't feel like this is they're having great at bats and things aren't falling. It's just not enough is happening. When they do have people on, they're not getting the big hit. Sac flies here and there, ground fielder's choice, scoring a run here and there, things like that. But where are the big hits?
I get it. You're pointing the finger at Ian Happ. That was kind of that's all I heard from that. No, I mean, certainly he bears his share of the blame here, but I don't know, this weekend to me, leaving the clubhouse late Sunday afternoon felt like, I don't know, one of the first times of the Craig Counsell era in which the Cubs were kind of like, yeah, we're not playing our best baseball right now. This has been kind of sloppy. This has not been crisp or organized. And you can see just the injuries have piled up. And I think Counsell was pretty real in terms of like, yeah, I hope Dansby and Nico are back in the lineup on Tuesday. I'll be happy that they're playing, but that's no guarantee that we're going to start scoring runs again. Because I think they might be facing Max Fried on Tuesday night. But I mean, whoever it is, you know, you got to give the Pirates credit, right? I mean, Paul Skeens look nasty. They have some real nice young pitching coming if it can stay healthy. But the lineup the Cubs rolled out the last couple of days were, once you kind of got past a certain point, I think it was pretty easy to navigate. And look, I guess that's why you bank those wins early, because you know it's not going to last forever. But you know, it does make you wonder, like, where's this coming from? It wasn't like Seiya and Bellinger got healthy and activated and the offense took off. I think in reading, you know, our colleague, you know, here and at The Athletic, Ken Rosenthal, his story on the massive gap between AAA and the majors, bigger than ever. And that's something where I think we can't be pinning this on, you know, oh, maybe Matt Shaw comes up. Like, no, it's like these guys have to get right. And our understanding at this moment is that Luis Vasquez is coming up, as ESPN first reported. However, that is not tied to Dansby Swanson's injury, which the full expectation is that he will be activated Tuesday. There's been this weird lingering Nico Horner hamstring issue. I think it's been 6 games where he sat out. The Cubs are still optimistic about Nico playing on Tuesday. So we'll see what Mr. Vasquez can bring, but it's been a weird stretch. And I'm sure there's got to be listeners who are like, really? You're starting this podcast right after they're losing? You couldn't have done it. You know, we're rolling.
You know, well, okay, here's like, I do think there are, if you're just angry to be angry and you don't want to hear excuses, I think that's okay. I think the way they've played, they should be playing better. But I do agree with when you're talking about Mastrobuoni and Madrigal playing every day. That's just, I mean, it's hard to do that. They're fine bench players. Are they great bench players? No, I expect both of them to be better at the plate. Like Mastrobuoni, I expect him to be better. I think he expects himself to be better offensively. Putting him at short for that many games, like eventually it was going to catch up to them. Like that's too much exposure for him at shortstop. Madrigal is, I think what he's turned into is like a contact guy off the bench that can play a good third base. And he should not unless, you know, he had these flashes when he was healthy, but that's what he is now. I just don't think he's ever going to be that player. And I think most fans would strongly agree with that. Those are the excuses, right? And then, I mean, this team should just be, I have higher expectations for them on offense, right? Eventually they're going to get going. I do believe that. But you can't, the other excuses, look at the pitching that they've gone up against. I know you hear Pittsburgh Pirates, but they faced 3 really good pitchers. They should have done better against Bailey Falter. But I do think there's some, and I've talked to coaches about this in the past over the years. You face a run of good pitchers, and then you get in your head, and then you can't hit pitchers that you should hit, right? And they struggled against Chris Sale, they struggled against Ronaldo Lopez. Like, all these guys have been pitching well. I was looking at some numbers since they were in Boston. That game in Boston, the Friday they were there, good game, right? 7 runs. They played really well. That's probably one of their best offensive performances. But since that game, which is about 21 games, I believe. No, it doesn't count Sunday's game. So 22 games, but the 21 games before Sunday, 211 batting average, which is 3rd worst in baseball. 87 weighted runs created plus, so like about 13% below average overall offense. That it's just not good enough. Like Seiya and Bellinger are back. They need to be hitting. I get it. It's good pitching. Jerry Jones and Paul Skeens, they're going to be a thorn in the Cubs' side for a while, I believe. I do believe what's funny when I say that, I think their best offensive performance has been in the past 10 days. It was against Jerry Jones in Pittsburgh.
Right.
That was one of their best games. And it was one of those things where it's like, are they going to turn it around? It just hasn't been consistent. They're not grinding pitchers down. They're not hitting for power. And sometimes you need bounces to go your way when you're not really swinging the hottest bats, and they're not even getting that. So nothing's really working. And the defense looks sloppy. We know the issues with the bullpen. We'll talk about that, but there is one thing that looks great, right? The starting pitching. And you were there Saturday, and every single time we cover this guy, it's at least I start to have this feeling. It's like, wait a second, what are we watching here? Like, how special is this?
For sure.
And then you look up the numbers, and you're like, okay, so 1981 Fernando Valenzuela. Like, I wasn't. Neither of us were old enough to remember that, but we've all heard of it, right? We know it was like a sensation, and it was a thing. It was like took over LA. They ended up winning the World Series. It was a whole season of Fernando mania. But 9 games in, 9 starts in, we're starting to see something with Shota that we just haven't seen before.
Well, I mean, you and I talk every day, but with our editors and coworkers of, okay, what do we got? What are we doing? And I don't know, Shota's in that territory now where it's like he's kind of a headline no matter what. It started out as, okay, it's his debut, and then he's facing the Dodgers, and then it's like, oh wow, like look at where he's at, 4 starts into his career, and it's like, oh well, he's probably going to get lit up one of these nights, right? And like that'll be a story of, okay, the league's figure something out, he's making an adjustment, and seeing where he is now is just amazing, because that's not how the Cubs talked about him. That is not how Shota presented himself. I think he was very much aware of how hard this could be, and to me, sitting in the press box, taking it in on Saturday, it was just like, oh, okay, like this could be like, Fernando Valenzuela. Bellinger had heard of that, was aware of it, obviously didn't know the full dimensions of it, but I don't know, like Jake Arrieta's Cy Young season, right? And even, what Justin Steele did for a long stretch last year elevated that team into playoff contention. And when did they fall out of it? When he had two so-so starts when they absolutely needed to win. And like this team, and you've been on this for a long time, Sahadev, the idea of like, where are the stars? That's great. You have depth. You have lots of, talent coming in the system that can fill pieces. And you have a manager now who's really good at like playing matchups, but like, where's the star? And I don't know. What do you think? Did they have one in Shota?
It's starting to feel that way. I'll say this. I know he can be that type of presence, right? He sometimes you feel like, well, what about the language barrier? I mean, I guess Ohtani has blown that out the water and shown that doesn't matter. You just perform and do amazing things on the field. People will take notice. But with him, there's also a personality, and no doubt. Feel like I want to hear his post games because he's got a sense of humor. He likes the moment, like when he's on the mound and he gets pumped up. Come on, fans love that. Like fans eat that up. We eat that up as media because it's easy to write about. And his teammates. I heard someone on the radio the other day. They're like, I like the stoic guy too, but there's something about playing behind that guy that gets really pumped up and fired up. I think it was Nico Horner was talking about this. It's one thing like to be there's certain guys you play. Maybe it was Hap because he played behind all these guys. It's like Lackey and Lester get fired up. Arrieta was more stoic. Shota, like he shows all the energy in the world. Like he gets a big out. He is pumped up. He's fired up. He's flexing on the mound. That's exciting, and he comes up big. Right now, he has all the recipe, all the ingredients to lead to, this guy's a superstar type player. I don't want to go overboard because it's not even 2 months into his career, but it's leading up to that. It has that feeling. He has those abilities and the charisma and everything that you want for a guy that it makes it easy to root for and fun to cover and fun to watch for the fans, and the teammates love him. So he's got everything there. Let's see if he can do it for another 4 months and then into the playoffs too, and then do it again next year, right? Like that's kind of like what we're waiting for with Justin Steele. Don't want to take too much away from a couple rough starts for him, but that's you want to see him keep doing it. You want to see these guys keep doing it. But Shota has everything you want to see. The fastball is where it's at, though, right? Like what's that going to do as it gets warmer? It's blowing out. Does the rise stay how it is? Do the metrics stay special? If they do, even if they drop a little bit, I think he can handle it. Like that's what I love, his mound presence. Like I like how he takes charge on the mound. I like when he goes to get a grounder, he's telling Michael Busch, get back to first base because I'm going to toss this to you. Don't come over here. I got this stuff like that. He knows how to pitch. The splitter is a really nasty pitch, and he confounds hitters right now. Like there's a lot of chase, but it's not like he walks people. So when you can combine that, like that's pitching. It's hard to see a guy that doesn't. It's not like he's in the zone all the time, but if he needs to be, he will.
He doesn't get recognized much at Dunkin' Donuts, though. He gets his smaller, medium iced latte, and his large. He says he goes from his house to the field. House, Dunkin' Donuts, field, goes back home, does it over again. But it is interesting. I think the Cubs, while they didn't necessarily put the full court press on Shota, they were very aware of him. They had scouted him for a long time. They remained engaged in the entire negotiations. And, did other teams miss on Shota? I mean, probably, right? I mean, there's a lot of teams who would want that in that contract right now, but and this is not taking anything away from Shota. I don't know if the success would have come so quickly in another place. I do think the Cubs, and you've written about this a lot, of the Cubs are good at kind of emphasizing pitchers' strengths. And Darvish said the same thing the other day when he was at Wrigley Field when I asked him, and that having Seiya Suzuki there helps, and having staffers with a Japanese background and ability to kind of help him with the assimilation process. Some really encouraging teammates as well. A very thoughtful, progressive manager. Like all of these elements, a city that he stayed in for a long time this offseason waiting for an offer from the Cubs. So all these things I think have really helped him, and we'll see where Shota Mania goes, but he is the difference between this team maybe being 5 under and us being what's going on here, to all right, they had a bad weekend against the Pirates, whatever, they're in pretty good shape.
I keep thinking about this, right? Last year around this time, the Cubs were not terrible, right? That they were okay, and it was Miami and Washington, right? That's those two series. Here's what and I kept coming back to that because it felt like it was, I think it was a 1-5 trip against two bad teams, or who we thought the Cubs were better than. Miami turned out to be a playoff team, right? But the Cubs should have won more of those games. Here's what I've been thinking about this, and I'm like, is this a missed opportunity? What we've been watching? No, I don't think so. What's happening right now is they're not playing well. They were playing well at that time. They weren't getting the big hit in that moment. That was what was going on in that moment. They weren't getting the big hit. There are barely any big hits to come up with right now. Nobody's getting they're not putting up much of a threat. They're playing sloppy defense. All they're getting is good starting pitching, right? Which you don't want to waste that. Sure, I get that. It's still bad to waste that, but it's not like this is oh no, you got to bank these wins when you're playing well. they're banking wins and not playing that well. They're 4 games under or over 500, right? They're 4 games over 500. Yes. And they're playing bad baseball. The bullpen is every day. I'm wondering, who does Craig Counsell go to? If Mark Leiter isn't the guy you're calling out of the bullpen, there's a little bit of concern. Listen, Ben Brown looks great. Ben Brown looks great, but our buddy Jesse Rogers brought up a great stat the other day. He said he has the highest exit velocity of like X number of balls in play in baseball.
Ben Brown does?
Really? Yeah.
Wow.
So he's
been Jesse is a big stat nerd.
So yeah. so and I think we kind of saw it today. He wriggled out of a jam today, but he got hit hard. There were some balls that, on a different day, something different happens there. So and I this isn't ripping Ben Brown at all. I think Ben Brown is actually like their best chance to have like a shutdown reliever in that bullpen. I'm just saying, like if you can figure out, like, I'm just a little worried about that fastball, but the curveball does keep guys off of it. Neris had that nice outing the other day. Maybe that's a step forward, but man, is he walking a fine line? I know we all see it. I don't need to explain it much further. What I like about him is he's been there. He doesn't get rattled in that moment, right? So you hope that this is, if he can make it through this hiccup, if this is the hiccup and it's like a 2.5 ERA in the bad time where he's not getting the good peripherals, let's hope he can figure out the peripherals and kind of solidify some of that. But you're starting to put a guy like Wisniewski in situations that he's unfamiliar with. He's got to get used to that, right? He's used to starting, and now he's coming in with 2 men on and 2 outs, and he's got to attack right away, right? It's not like it was non-competitive and he just walked a guy in 4 pitches, but those are situations that he's unfamiliar with, that he's got to learn. You have to lean on guys that just haven't really been around. I mean, Tyson Miller feels like he's one of the more trusted guys right now. I don't, like, when I'm saying something like that, like, I just feel like I don't know where this bullpen is with the combination of injuries, ineffectiveness, and just like kind of like nobody, none of the young guys really like taking over just yet and stepping up. And the biggest issue, I think, when we talk about Ben Brown, Hayden Wisniewski, is I don't think Craig Counsell is at a point where he can say, they're in my bullpen. I'm good with that. I don't need to keep him stretched out. I don't need to worry about my rotation. He's not in that position. So
not at all.
It makes it more difficult to how he wants to use them.
But he explicitly said over the weekend, he was asked, and not for the first time, about, what about Ben Brown as your closer? And he's like, we can't say he's never going to start again. And he also thinks he gets better by pitching more. And this is kind of the Counsell factor. Now, we've talked a lot about David Ross. We will not linger on that during this podcast. I think David Ross did a lot of good things for the Cubs. I think he did what he was hired to do. But this is one area where Counsell comes in with a lot of authority and credibility and an ability to, I don't even know if you'd say managing up considering his contract, but to say, this is what I want, this is what we need, this is what we should be doing. And so I think it's going to be fascinating to see how they handle Kyle Hendricks. I mean, we've gone 20 plus minutes here, have not mentioned how the last guy standing from the 2016 team has been probably the worst starting pitcher in baseball this year. And it's not easy to say, because everyone who's encountered Kyle Hendricks during his time in Chicago has been impressed with his grace, his class, his professionalism, all those things. And he's delivered in the biggest moments in franchise history. But like right now, if you're Craig Counsell, as much as you respected him across the way, like, what does he do for you right now? And then if you're Craig Counsell, you're also a little paranoid, right? That's the word he's used, Sahadev, of like, how are we going to get these innings? What happens if someone else gets hurt? And then you look at his salary, his status, like, there's a lot of moving parts here. So I think my read coming off this Pirates series was Kyle will get another chance, or maybe he skipped, or maybe he's moved to the bullpen. I don't think he's getting DFA'd immediately. Maybe I will be proven wrong, but it seems like they're going to try a little more or a little longer to see if they could salvage it, or just like to have him as kind of an insurance policy. But I mean, Craig Counsell's tone of we need to be better. This isn't working. That's not going to work. Like there was no spinning that one. Like he was very clear how he felt coming off of that start, and it's hard to see where he fits if all these guys get healthy, because that's happening too. You have Drew Smiley going out to pitch Tuesday at South Bend. Jordan Wicks should be following at a minor league affiliate not far from then. After that, I don't know if he'd immediately go back on the major league roster, but Palencia is out with Iowa, Daniel Palencia, that is. You've got Julian Merriweather on Monday starting a throwing progression for basically another spring training almost. And then Yency Almonte, the hope being maybe by the end of this week he could start throwing again after a relatively short layoff. But I go back to Sahadev, something you said to me at Wrigley the other day, of something that was told to you of like, what do you expect when you have this many injuries? Like, do you think, like who's still left at Iowa? Like,
yeah,
all their good options, except for Cato Horton, who's not ready yet, have already been called up, right?
Right. I think that they're all like the other names I hear about were in AA. Zach Lee, Michael Arias, Eduardo Nunez, who just got bumped up to AAA. Like they're not ready yet. Yeah, they could be close. Maybe we'll hear them in June or July if they still need to keep calling guys up. But yeah, it's no, and like that's not a knock on the system. Like not many teams can have this many injuries and then be like, okay, let's keep calling pitchers up that can be effective. You have to that's why they had to trade for Tyson Miller. That's why like whenever someone is DFA'd now, you have to wonder, it's like, can the Cubs get in on that guy? Like the guy the Orioles just DFA'd, Mike Bauman. It's like, okay, that guy's got stuff. Can he help the Cubs? Like, I'm not saying that the Cubs are in on him, but you just have to think about that every single time that someone hits the waiver wire, because that's the situation they're in. When it comes to Hendricks, this always happens, right? It's the fans are out first, right? The fans like it goes, the fans are like, they're done. And then if it continues, it's like media's like, I don't know, like, what are they going to do here? Then the team finally is like, yeah, it's time. And the player is the last to kind of like accept, like, okay, this isn't working, right? And I think that's the hardest. When I saw I was in the Pirates clubhouse after that game because it was a Paul Skeens game. And when I saw the videos, like the difference between like the complete like 180 between Hendricks and Counsell was like, it was, because nobody wants to see Kyle Hendricks fail, right? Like nobody, not even like his opponents. Like he's a good dude who like he never should have been this good. He just never should have been this good, and that he was ever as good as he was is a huge win. So like, and you've always been like, is it done? Is it over? And like when he came back last year and he was good, I think it gave people a little bit more optimism that it's like, oh wow, he can still do this. Great. Okay, let's keep rolling, and maybe he's got a few more years, and maybe he does. Maybe it comes back. Like it happens. I'm not sure if we're ever going to see it again with the Cubs, though. I think he's had like, and that's not saying I think he's done now. I agree with you. I think they're in a situation where they're going to have to give him a start. Is it going to be against Atlanta? I hope not. Just for his sake and for the Cubs' sake. Like that was a brutal matchup last year when he was feeling good or when he was getting results.
Like I would think facing the Cardinals at Busch Stadium Memorial Day weekend would be a pretty. But facing the Pirates twice in 6 days also pretty good.
Right.
So.
You would think that would work, but yeah, I think the bottom line is how you explained it. They need depth right now, and maybe it's just until they're absolutely sure. Yeah, Jordan Wicks is good. He's healthy. He's coming back, and that's why they have these guys like Dan Straley and Julio Teheran, right? Like in AAA. If there are more injuries and they have to get rid of Hendricks to make room for, like, say they have to get rid of Hendricks and then the injuries come again, like, you just have to do what you have to do, right? I don't like it. It's not what anybody wants, but I think we're getting close to that point. It's start by start now. I think he has. I agree. He has one more start, but every single start, you're like, okay, what does he have? What can he do? Can he get through it? And when you're living like that, it's hard. It's hard to say, like, feel comfortable that that's a real way to succeed and thrive.
Yeah, and that's really been the awkward part about this season. And in our episodes to come, we'll get into like what Craig Counsell is really like, our interactions with him. It is really hard to talk about the Cubs right now without having like Counsell's kind of monotone voice in your head of, okay, what is he thinking? We have covering a farm system that is interesting and will show a lot this summer, right? Like, will any of these guys bring a spark the way that a Schwarber did, or Hap came up and contributed?
Wilson Contreras when he
Wilson
came
Contreras, like, and not talking about like, Schwarber's comeback in the World Series, just like that basic jolt of like, oh, this guy's up and he's on a heater, like let him go. Like, I don't know if I see that. We'll have the Cade Horton watch or countdown be interesting, and then this is all really kind of geared up towards the trade deadline. And to me, watching Shota the other day was kind of like, all right, like if they have this guy at the front of their rotation and they can clean up some other areas and get healthy, does that make you push in a little more? And I have a hard time seeing this team just totally bottoming out. And so I think this year will be dramatic. It always is, right? I mean,
yeah.
this team,
it's always something.
This is a podcast about a circus, and we know that the Cubs will deliver the drama, and it'll be stuff that we couldn't even like dream up when we were first talking to our people here at Foul Territory. Like, there's crazy stuff is going to happen all season, and we can't wait to discuss it with you guys.
Yeah, let's see if they get a little spark on Tuesday. If Nico and Dansby come back, that should at least solidify something, at least defensively. You'd like to hope. Other than that, they obviously need to wake up offensively and get going and make things more interesting, at least for us to watch on a daily basis. I'm really excited to have a podcast back, talking with my buddy Patrick Mooney. We are going to be on top of everything Cubs for you guys. So stick with us, keep listening, subscribe, do all that good stuff you do with podcasts. We're excited to be a part of Foul Territory. Keep listening. We're going to have multiple podcasts for you this week, 3 podcasts a week during the season. So be ready for that. Plenty of Cubs talk coming from us. Thanks so much for listening. This is Sahadev Sharma and Patrick Mooney with Northside Territory. Take care.